back, friends. Welcome back to day 6 of our 7 days of extreme grocery budget meals challenge. Oh my gosh, we are almost at the end of the finish line. Yes, it's been a marathon, but it's been a fun one. We're almost done and we are still eating good in the neighborhood. Yes, please be sure to check out my first video in this series that explains the breakdown of the cost, the meal plans, what we're doing, and all that good stuff. I always like to include a picture here so you can see what we're working with. Very simple ingredients. So please be sure to check out that video, and don't forget to like, comment, share, and of course subscribe, because guess what? You don't want to miss anything here. Today's recipes are definitely filled with comfort fall foods. You got to check these recipes out. So today's recipes include this delicious chicken pot pie. So good. And then also this chicken and dumpling soup that was so appetizing. But first, of course, we're gonna start with pancakes for breakfast. This was day 2 of our pancakes meal. I put a little sprinkles on it to make it exciting. The pancakes recipe will be included in day 3, so I'll try to link it above and down in the description. But yeah, it was really good. I mean, we love pancakes. You can't go wrong with that. So pancake and syrup for day 6 breakfast. Let's move on to lunch. So for lunch, we're doing potato and dumpling soup. And here in my bowl, I just have my flour that's already been pre-sifted. And then I'm gonna add some salt. All the measurements and ingredients are gonna be down below. So of course, I'm creating my well, and I'm gonna be adding some milk. Now, if you don't have milk, feel free to add water. But of course, in our grocery list, we added milk to our list, so it should be available if you're following this meal plan. So here I'm just mixing everything around, just getting everything nice and hydrated. And I'm adding the milk in as I go because it's easy to add more milk than it is to add more flour, especially because I already pre-sifted it. So we're just gonna mix it around. And it's always cool to try to make dumplings on your own. I don't like a mushy dumpling. I like a dumpling with a little bit of bite. So here I'm just mixing around the dough. Then I'm gonna go in with my hands and just mix it around to make sure that I'm getting all that flour incorporated with the wet ingredients. And this is a very simple recipe. So there I'm just dumping it out, and I want to apologize for my camera being so blurry. I promise it gets better later on, but for some reason it wasn't focusing. So here I'm just kneading the dough. From there, I'm just gonna go ahead and roll out the dough. And if you watch any of my videos, you know that I'm all about efficiency. So I don't take a lot of time doing these things. So as a matter of fact, I pre-made these dumplings so that I could put them in the freezer and come back to them later in order to make the soup. Here I'm just using my pizza cutter, nothing fancy, cutting some lines, and then I'm gonna go back across. I'm just cutting out little squares or rectangles, whatever size you feel is perfect for your family. There's no right or wrong way to do this. Super easy, super simple. Here I'm just showing you what it looks like from the top. And all I'm gonna do is I'm gonna dump some flour on top of these. I'm just gonna use my hand to just kind of gather them. No need to be fancy here. I'm just gonna gather them, use my hand to kind of peel them up. Like I said, I didn't flour the surface, so there was really no need to do anything spectacular here. And as you can see, the flour is gonna help me to gather them. And at the same time, because I'm putting them in the freezer, that flour is gonna help keep them separated. And then it's also gonna thicken our soup when we put it inside the pot. Here I'm just gathering them, and I'm sorry about the camera being shaky, but I really wanted you to see what I was doing. And like I said, busy mom, I didn't even have time to put this on the tripod. So here I am just gathering them, making sure that everything's coated. There's my Ziploc bag. I'm just gonna go ahead and stick them inside there, and from there I'm just gonna put them in the freezer until I need them. You can do this a day ahead as a meal prep, or you can do it the same day, but I find that it's just a better texture when it's been sitting in the freezer for a while and you just add it to your pot. So there I'm just showing you what they kind of look like. And I have some pre-cut potatoes. I always cut my potatoes ahead of time and soak them in water. So here's my pan, and you know what I'm using. Listen, if you've been here, you know that this is bacon fat. So I put bacon fat in my pot, and of course I'm adding my onions. I'm just gonna stir that around and get that nice and incorporated. So you just wanna stir it around, and like I said, all the measurements are gonna be down below. So to that, I'm just gonna go ahead and season the pot. I want to get some browning here, and the best way to do that is to go ahead and add my seasonings now, because there's really nothing else to brown other than the seasonings with the onions. So of course I have my complete seasoning, my adobo, some black pepper, and I'm just stirring that around. And as a matter of fact, this day I was on a conference call, so it did get a little browner than I thought really quick, but that's fine. That actually worked out perfect. So here I'm gonna put a stick of butter, and this is about a tablespoon of butter, and that's just to help the flour that we're gonna put in to incorporate and to cook out, because you don't want that raw flour taste. So I'm just making sure that I get all those good bits up off the bottom. And there's that flour. So I just throw the flour in and I just mix everything together. Now, if you need more oil here, you can do that. But here, like I said, all I'm doing is just trying to cook out the flour. And there I'm going to add some milk. So I have about a cup of milk mixed with water, but like I said, measurements always down below. I'm just gonna stir it in phases, and I needed to find my whisk, but I didn't want to leave it, because if you're making a roux, you know that you need to constantly be whisking. So I had to find my backup whisk and just hurry up and get to it to make sure I don't have any lumps. So I'm just whisking that around, and I'm going and adding my milk and water mixture. So you want to go ahead and add your liquid in phases, because you don't want everything to seize up on you. And at the same time, you want to make sure that you don't get any weird lumps. So there I'm whisking vigorously, and that's what you want to do. And this just makes a really, really, really creamy sauce for this chicken pot pie. So there I'm gonna add some more liquid, and you wanna be mindful of the amount of liquid that you're adding, because you want to keep this thick, but not too thick. All right, so I'm adding chicken bouillon, and if you have the powder stuff, you can put that, and I'm gonna add parsley. I'm just gonna mix it around. Now, how thick or how thin you want your soup is totally dependent on you. Remember, we're going to be adding potatoes here, and that starch from these potatoes that we're adding is going to help to thicken up our soup. So there, I'm just going to put the potatoes in to cook, and this is going to sit and cook for about 20 minutes, because I want my potatoes to be soft, but I don't want them to be mushy. So I'm just going to cover that and leave that there for about 20 minutes, and then I'm going to come back and check on it, because remember, we have flour in this pot, and that flour will settle on you, so you want to constantly be mixing. So that's why I keep adding that water in increments, because it keeps thickening up. So as it's thickening up, I want to go ahead and thin it out. So here I'm just checking on my pot again. Like I said, you want to go ahead and stir it. You don't want your potatoes to get to the bottom and get stuck. You don't want your mixture to boil over. You don't want any weird things to happen. So you always want to be checking. And then there, I'm going to add some sugar. This sugar helps to balance it out. It actually does not change the flavor at all. It just makes it taste good. Just know that. As soon as my potatoes were to my liking, I went ahead and added my dumplings. The dumplings only take about 5 minutes to cook. They're super small, and they just take no time. And then you'll see them puff up, and you can tell when they're finished, when they start rising to the top. So I'm just gonna bring my pot back to a boil. And like I said, when I put the dumplings in, they thickened up a little. So this is gonna continue to thicken, and you'll determine how thick you want it. So here's my fancy plate. Look at me trying to be fancy, girl. This was a total fail, because I was like, just throw all the parsley in there. And then I'm gonna add some smoked paprika, and then afterwards I added some cayenne, which was amazing with this. So you gotta try this recipe. Look how chunky and delicious this was. Oh my gosh. So yeah, this was lunch for day 6, and now we're gonna move on to dinner. So here I'm making my crust for my pot pie, and in my mixing bowl I have about 3 cups of flour. Measurements of course down below. So to that I'm gonna add some shortening. And this is a very simple recipe, and if you don't have shortening, feel free to use butter. If you don't have butter, you can use cooking oil. I just find that this is a good combination, and it's really basic. So all that is included here is just my flour, shortening, and salt. And of course I'm making a mess per usual with this KitchenAid. So all I did was go ahead and knead it inside the KitchenAid until it got to a crumbly texture. I just want to combine everything together, and you can do this with your hand. I was just being lazy. So here you can see I'm scraping down my bowl, making sure that everything's getting incorporated, and I'm going to open this mixer a couple of times just to scrape down and make sure everything's getting incorporated. So there you see it's crumbly, looking kind of dry. So I go ahead and add some water, and I like to keep the water on hand next to me even when I pull this out, because you'll find that you'll probably still need water as it goes, and you can kind of feel how you want your crust to be. So there, it's still a little crumbly, still dry, but I still want to incorporate what I have here. And the only reason I like using the mixer is because it stops my hands from being in there. And when you're making a crust, you really don't want to melt the fats, so you don't want to handle it too much. So here I'm just dumping out my mixture, and see, it's all a crumbly mess, but that's okay because it's gonna come together. So I'm just gathering everything together. And you'll know that you have a good crust when it forms like a ball. So here I'm just bringing everything together, and you'll see that I'm going to add some more water, and you can just add it here versus adding it in the mixing bowl, because you can feel, because it's easier to feel how your dough is coming along, and you can determine if you need more water here or not. So I just added more water, and I'm just kneading it, and I'm going to continue to knead it until it gets to the texture that I like. And eventually it'll turn into this bouncing ball of joy. So I'm just flouring my surface again. And all I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna make sure that everything's nice and floured, and I'm just gonna roll it out. And see, I'm no professional. We're not striving for perfection here. We're just striving for yummy goodness. So here I'm just rolling everything out, and it'll continue to crumble, and you'll just continue to move it. But as the fats start to melt a little bit, it'll start coming together. So you see, I'm just rolling it. As you roll it, it'll start coming together, and I just keep flipping it and turning it. And this doesn't have to be a perfect shape at all. Now, spoiler alert, I made this dough in the morning for dinner. And I meant to put it in the refrigerator, and I did not, but it worked out okay. Listen, I'm not a pie crust person anyway, so that is not my claim to fame. I'm more cakes and pies without the crust or with a pre-bought crust. So I rolled this out. This is what it looked like. And in order to store it, a quick thing to do is to just add parchment paper and roll it. But as you can see, mine started breaking apart, but that's okay, because like I said, I wrapped it and I put it over to the side, went on about my day. Really, I should have just made this right before, but being busy, that's one of the reasons why I even wanted to come on YouTube, is because being a busy mom, you know, you do what you can when you can, and cooking dinner is something that I try to get done every day, but I do whatever works for me. And here, that's what worked for me, is to make it early in the morning. So we'll come back to that later. So in my pan, I lost the clip of me putting in my oil, my flour, and my butter, and my onions. So that's what's in here. But like I said, measurements always down below. So this is just me stirring everything, and I'm gonna add more flour here. So I just added enough flour to kind of see where the consistency was gonna be. And today's meals are rootastic. So this is me pouring in the chicken stock. I made chicken stock earlier in the week with some of the bones from one of the meals. So I'm just adding water here. And you can add milk or cream, but I chose to add water. It's the most frugal. There I am with my whisk again. I have a favorite whisk and this is not it. I don't know where it ends up when it's time for me to do a video. But I'm just whisking around the flour and the liquids just to make sure that we don't get any lumps. And my heat is on about medium high because I like this to go pretty fast, and I like to keep it thick while I'm working with it. It's easier for me to thin it out, so I always keep water nearby. So I'm just whisking it all around. I'm gonna let it kind of come to the simmer and kind of thicken up a little bit, but I'm gonna keep adding water. But I'm gonna keep adding broth. Now, if you don't have broth, water is fine. So here I am just whisking all around. Now you want to keep this base pretty thick because remember it's going to go in the oven and you want it to thicken up. So here I'm adding some chicken bouillon because I didn't have enough broth to have that good chicken flavor. Then I added some complete seasoning and some seasoning salt and then some garlic powder, of course. Now you can add any herbs that you want to here. This would have been good to add like an Italian seasoning. So here I just added parsley. I like the color. You know, anytime I can incorporate color into food, I try to do that. So I'm going to add milk here. Like I said, the measurements are down below. Now, if you don't want to add milk, lactose intolerant, I don't know. You don't have to add milk here. And as a matter of fact, you can do a vegan pot pie with this base. You just, of course, would not add the chicken bouillon and chicken stock. So here I added my favorite complete seasoning and I'm just stirring everything around. So you want to constantly be stirring because I'm cooking this on medium high. So there's that milk, and like I said, if you were going to make this a vegan recipe, you would add an alternative to that type of milk. So you just want to stir it around and make sure that your flavors are there. And I needed some more chicken stock, so I put some bouillon in there. And because we're on a budget this week, I didn't use anything that I had pre-made in the way of chicken stocks. I just wanted to show that you can make your own stock. So you're going to let this come to a simmer, and once it comes to the simmer, this is when the action starts. So in my freezer, I had some frozen veggies, and I love to add frozen veggies whenever I can. I always have them on hand, and they're super cheap, and I just keep them in the freezer. And then there's that chicken that I shredded earlier in the week. I think that's about not even a full cup of chicken, and this stretched so much. And then off camera, of course, I've already cut up my potatoes and I boiled them for about 15 minutes. So I'm gonna add them at the end. I don't like to put my potatoes here because I don't want them to get mushy. So here's my baking dish, and I'm just gonna spray it down. So here we are with our hot and delicious and creamy. Oh, look how good that is. We can just eat that right now. I mean, what's the point of even putting a crust? But no, it's gonna get even better. So there I'm making sure I get every bit out of that pot. I'm just gonna make sure that everything's evenly distributed throughout. And here is where I want to add my potatoes at. So I'm going to just pour my potatoes in. And I mean, the potatoes, you just cook them on the side. There's no right or wrong way to cook potatoes. And you just add them here. And it just makes it so much easier to cook. You don't want to put raw potatoes in this because everything is cooked. And really, you just want to brown the crust at this point. So here we are with my pie crust. Listen, y'all, don't laugh at me. Don't do it. So as I unfolded it, I realized, yeah, this is not going to be one whole pie crust, because normally I would have just had it in the parchment and just put it on top of the pot pie, but that is not what is going to happen here. But trust me, it is okay. It is okay. What did I say? We're not striving for perfection here. We're striving for yummy and good enough, because what? We tried our best. So there, I just decided to put it in sheets on top of the mixture. And honestly, I will tell you, I preferred it this way because it made it very rustic looking, and it left layers and just chunks and bits and pieces. So some was brown, some was not. Oh my gosh, it was so good. So we had 2 extra family members that came and visited, and they tried this as well. So this actually served for 8 people, and we still had leftovers. So there we have it. Look at this creation that I made. Listen, we are gonna Frankenstein our way through it. This was so good. It looked better this way, and I think I will prefer to do it this way from now on. I just went ahead and tore up the pieces and put them on top, and it's no different from if you were putting biscuits on top of a pot pie. I just did it this way, and I felt like this worked out, you know? I mean, of course it's not gonna work out right because I'm filming it, but so I put it in the oven and I baked it at, I believe, 400 degrees for about 30 minutes. And this is what we came out with. Look how good that is. So I'm gonna plate it up so you can see favorite days. So here I'm just plating everything out, and you can see the different layers that it created. So some of the pie crust is underneath the gravy. So guys, so as always, until the next video, bye.